The war had dragged on for months, grinding villages into rubble and turning forests into graveyards. Winter arrived like a second enemy, one that cared nothing for flags or orders. Snow swallowed the land, and the cold became a weapon sharper than any blade. In the ruins of a barn on the edge of a deserted Ukrainian village, two soldiers stumbled into each other. One wore the blue and yellow patch of Ukraine, the other the insignia of Russia. Both were exhausted, half-frozen, and desperate for shelter. Their rifles rose instinctively, but hesitation hung in the air. The storm outside screamed louder than their hatred. Neither spoke at first. They sat opposite each other, backs pressed against splintered beams, weapons resting within reach. The silence was heavy, broken only by the wind rattling through the cracks. Hours passed, and the cold gnawed deeper. Finally, survival forced them closer. Shoulder to shoulder they shared warmth, like reluctant brothers. At first, there were no words, just the sound of breath fogging in the air. But hunger and fatigue loosened tongues. The Ukrainian spoke of his daughter, a little girl who loved to draw suns on scraps of paper, waiting for him in a city far away. The Russian spoke of his mother, who still wrote letters he could not answer, her handwriting trembling with age. They discovered they shared the same fears, dying nameless, being forgotten, never seeing home again. They laughed bitterly at the irony. Two men who had been ordered to kill each other, now clinging together to stay alive. For one night, the war receded. They were not enemies, but men, cold and tired, clinging to life. When dawn broke, the storm eased. Outside, the war still raged. Orders pulled them in opposite directions. They stood, rifles in hand, and looked at each other one last time. No handshake, no embrace, just a silent recognition. A fragile bond born in the frost, destined to dissolve in the fire of battle. The Ukrainian turned toward his lines, the Russian toward his. Each carried the memory of that night like a hidden scar, proof that even in the darkest winters, humanity could flicker like a fragile flame. The war continued, shifting front lines and leaving scars across the land. The two soldiers never met again. Yet years later, each would recall that night when asked about the war. The Ukrainian, now older, would tell his daughter, "Not all enemies are monsters. Sometimes they are just men trapped like us." The Russian, speaking quietly to his mother, would admit, "I once shared warmth with the enemy. He was no different from me." Neither knew the other's fate, but both carried the same truth, that in the coldest night of war, they had found a fleeting friendship, fragile but real. Born not of politics or victory, but of survival and shared humanity.